Welcome to episode 164 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman coming to you on late Monday, September 11th. It's been a busy day in Rutgers athletics and part of why this is late coming from me. So I appreciate you listening and watching just the same. But plenty of sports I just wanted to delve into and then touch on football quite a bit at the really the midpoint to the end point. But men's basketball announcing today that they're going to have a charity exhibition game against St. John's. It'll be the first public appearance on the sidelines for St. John's for Rick Pitino. So it'll be buzzworthy event. It's at Carnesecca Arena in Queens. It is not at the Rack. Tickets information was all posted today. I covered the story on the Scarlet Faithful, so you can check it out there if you need to. But it was going to be a secret scrimmage. Usually programs have 2 secret scrimmages before the preseason, and they turned this into a charity event for the Jimmy V Foundation, which is just awesome. And it's also a tremendous test for Rutgers. Joel Soriano versus Cliff Amori is must-see TV. I don't know if it'll actually be on TV. It'll probably be streamed. But this is the third charity event or charity exhibition that Rutgers has had under Peichel. They played Fairfield last year for LeGrand, and then a few years ago they also played St. John's for hurricane relief for the Red Cross. It was in Puerto Rico, I believe 2018. So really cool event. I know people hope that, St. John's and Rutgers will play in the regular season one day, hopefully next year. It's always, that's certainly a school that I've always hoped is kind of just like a regular on the non-conference schedule, but we'll see. But we have to be happy with this. And it's certainly going to be a good test for Rutgers in the preseason. It's October 21st. So that's about 2 weeks out, or 60, a little more than 2 weeks out from Rutgers Princeton in Trenton to start the season on Monday, November 6th. Wanted to briefly touch on some fall sports. I had recaps on field hockey, volleyball, and women's soccer over the weekend. Field hockey off to a tremendous start, 6-0. Head coach Mary Civico had her on the podcast before the season started. They have 2 ranked wins now. They just beat Princeton, and they beat UConn the week before. They had that West Coast trip. Puck Winter has 6 goals. She just got named Big Ten Co-Player of the Week. So a great start. They've actually never started 6-0 for Mary Civico, and that includes her tremendous team from 2 years ago that won the Big Ten tournament. So big things from field hockey right now. And then all those games have been on the road, which is amazing. Then you have volleyball off to a 7-1 start. They beat Columbia and Morgan State over the weekend. Their one loss is a 5-set loss at NC State. They were up 2-1, super close to being undefeated. Now, listen, they haven't beat anyone great, but at the same time, it's still a positive for this program to be winning matches they should. It's certainly a step forward. And before you can win, consistently in the Big Ten, you got to win consistently in the non-conference, and they're doing that. And I'm going to have head coach Caitlin Schweihofer on next week, so stay tuned for that. And then soccer, women's soccer just completed non-conference play, 4-2-2. A little bit of a disappointment there. They had a bad loss to Hofstra at home, where they were shut out 1-0. But they played NC State on the road. It was a very good program, pretty similar to Rutgers in terms of NCAA tournament year after year after year. Rutgers had a lead, and then NC State scored, I believe, in the 88th minute. So that was a tough one, but still a quality result. And then they also had a tie with Princeton, which is quality. So the only bad loss was Hofstra. And then they lost 2-0 to Georgetown at home, who was ranked number 14 at the time. But they just had 2 pretty quality wins over Providence and UMass, both 1-0, both hard-fought wins, 2 pretty good teams. So they're 4-2-2. I'm optimistic. They've made some. They did a little bit of a change in the formation, went to a 4-4-2. Riley Tiernan playing more of it as an attacking midfielder role now. She's, just so talented. And you have Emily Mason, their national player in the defense, former high school player of the year. She's running into form after missing, pretty much the whole offseason with an injury. And Sam Kroger, the leading scorer from last season, is working her way back. So I think this team certainly has a shot at the Big Ten. They're going to play an undefeated Indiana team this weekend. So stay tuned for that. But definitely optimistic that they're going to end up still having a great year. And then men's soccer is a bit of a concern. They're 1-3-1. They got beaten pretty bad at UCLA, who's a very good team. over the weekend for nothing. They kind of squandered some stuff with St. John's. They tied and they lost to Delaware, so that's a little concerning. They lost to Princeton. They beat St. Peter's. They have Columbia on Wednesday, and then they start Big Ten play. So, most likely they're going to have to either run the table in Big Ten play or win the Big Ten tournament to get back to the NCAA tournament. They really put themselves in a hole. I think they're super talented, a lot of new parts, and they just haven't quite figured it out yet, but optimistic they will. So let's talk football. Obviously, huge opportunity this weekend against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is the walking wounded right now. I had to write this down. Both receivers, Jalen Lane and Ali Jennings. Jennings had more of a serious injury. Doesn't seem like he's going to be able to play, but hasn't been officially declared out yet. Jalen Lane, I think, is more likely to play, but I don't know if that means he will. Their quarterback, Grant Wells, missed the last drive of the game against Purdue. They lost by a touchdown to Purdue. He's banged up. And then their tight end, Nick Gall, who's a senior captain, had season-ending surgery before the Purdue game. So offensively, they are really hurting right now. And obviously the Rutgers defense is feeling pretty good. So listen, this is, the spread opened at, I think the line was 4.5. And now it's close to 7. Obviously people are putting money on Rutgers here, which always makes you nervous as a Rutgers fan. But this is a game they should win. This is a game that is for the taking for Rutgers. I think what's interesting is expectations versus hope, right? Going into the season, I covered the polls that I did. The optimism for fans was with 5 to 6 wins. I picked them to go 4-8. Most fans picked them to get 5 or 6 wins. It's funny now that when you see comments, even though they're winning and they're playing relatively well, you're seeing some very pointed and kind of perfectionist type comments about certain things that Rutgers, offensively and defensively, aren't doing, or people think are concerns moving forward. Listen, I set it out in my rapid reaction on Saturday. We don't know how good this team is yet, and I don't know if they're good. I don't know, but they're certainly not terrible, and they definitely look improved from last year. So if your expectation is this is year 4 and there should be no question they should go to a bowl game, I get that. If your expectation coming into the season was you weren't really sure how good they were going to be, you just wanted them to be better, you have every reason to be happy right now. I'm happy right now with how they've looked. They haven't been perfect. They've had, obviously that third quarter against Temple was awful. The play calling, the lack of ability to move the football, Temple just hanging around. It was super frustrating quarter. And then obviously it was a great sign, which I did not emphasize enough in the rapid reaction. That's why it's a rapid reaction. It was late. But just, I had talked about going into the game in my preview about seeing their fire, seeing their hunger, how hard this team was going to play, how they were going to respond after almost losing to Temple a year ago. And we saw it in the fourth quarter. We saw them have no mercy, 23 unanswered points. And that was the kind of killer instinct that we haven't seen from this team in a long time. Gavin Wimsatt, that 61-yard pass to Jaquay Jackson, yes, he's missed some throws. He's been a little inaccurate. But that his ceiling in terms of being able to connect to Jaquay Jackson, in stride, huge play down the field, it's why you have to believe that he should get every opportunity he should this season to improve, because it's September. I'm really curious if he can stay healthy and he's got enough weapons around him. And again, the running back room hasn't even been complete. What does Gavin Wimsatt look like in November? Because people forget how young he is and inexperienced he is. He's just scratching the surface, in my opinion. And, the more reps he gets, the more experience he gets. Obviously, Big Ten play, it's going to be a whole nother level. And I talked about after the rapid reaction, how is he going to react when he gets punched in the mouth, when he has that first turnover? How is he going to react in a Big Ten game when Rutgers is losing and he's got to bring the team back? That's when I think we'll really know the full measure of his development and progress, and ceiling perhaps as well. If he can really, deliver in those types of situations. We'll see. But without a doubt, that the ceiling for this team and for Whimsett is much higher. Just like I was going back to the Jaquay Jackson catch right before Kyle Monungai just took over and broke the game open, where he had the 6 carries for 57 yards or whatever, and the touchdown. That pitch and catch to Jackson, he was pretty much wide open on the sideline. But that is a throw so many times before that Rutgers wasn't able to make. And it was, close to 20 yards. And Whimsett did it pretty easily in terms of how he looked doing it. So the upside is certainly there. This is not a perfect team. Even defensively, they have things they have to work on. I saw people were criticizing the pass rush. By the way, just Aaron Lewis had 5 quarterback pressures against Temple, which is pretty high. And with EJ Warner throwing so quickly, of course, Rutgers wasn't going to have as many quarterback hits, sacks, all that. But I wrote about it after the game. I mean, they had 13 pass deflections. 13. That's a ton, and it shows the versatility of this defense. The safeties, I think, are looking pretty good. Igben Newson and Loyal made some big plays. Flip Dixon made some big plays. He had that one-on-one at the goal line. I mean, all 3 safeties made huge plays against Temple. That's really encouraging. Melton and Longerbeam played pretty well. The defensive line has been pretty good and pretty deep. Powell and Jennings are 2 of the best pass coverage linebackers there are in the Big Ten. I mean, Jennings was ridiculous, and he had 3 pass breakups in the game. And Pro Football Focus, I'm going to be writing on their grades and everything, but Jennings was super high. So there's a lot to be encouraged. Jay Patel bounced back. He had those 3 field goals. Flynn Appleby has been solid. McAtammy is automatic. I just jinxed it, but in terms of kickoffs, 13 for 13 in touchbacks. So as a whole, this team is more fundamentally sound. They're more solid. The offensive line is a huge concern. Tyler Needham's hurt for a while. We don't know how long. Shiano said he would update the injury or the availability report on Saturday, but essentially said he's not out for the year. Didn't look good. He was carted off the field. But the offensive line, I mean, they played 10 guys in the first game, 11 in the second. I thought the first was, heat related. I think that was part of it. But, I mean, they played one more guy, and obviously Needham left the game injured. But there's a lack of cohesion there just in terms of trying to get all the parts to fit. And they got to figure it out pretty quick. They got to figure it out this week with Virginia Tech, and then you're at the big house in Michigan. Otherwise, it's going to really handicap the offense. It's going to stunt Whimsett's ability to utilize all of his strengths. The running backs have to stay healthy. Sam Brown just got back. Aaron Young is hopefully back soon. Jashawn Benjamin has been very good as a freshman. I wrote today about, in the passing game, the running backs being utilized more this year. 89 receiving yards all of last year, 80 yards so far. It was 3 catches, 1 for Brown, 1 for Monungai, and 1 for Jashawn Benjamin. All 3 ended up resulting ultimately into a touchdown. Benjamin's was a touchdown. Brown got down to the goal line and then ran it in. And then Monungai finished that drive off against Northwestern with his own 20-yard run after that 15-yard touchdown run after that 20-yard catch. So seeing Whimsett and Shiraka use the running backs as a safety valve makes a lot of sense because they're all playmakers. And if they can get any of them out in open space, they're going to be able to just fly. So haven't seen as much out of the tight ends yet, but certainly intriguing development with the wide receivers, the running backs. And then, Jaquay Jackson had a huge game. Did not hear much from Ian Strong. He did play, by the way. He I believe it was 22 snaps, mostly in blocking situations. So the point is, we don't fully know yet. There's been some encouraging signs through 2 weeks so far. There's been some things that we've seen and said, okay, well, this team is not going to challenge for the Big Ten title. But they've limited mistakes. They have 2 turnovers total, so 1 per game. They had 4 penalties in the second game, so 6 total. Not terrible. There haven't been a ton of drops, not much at all. Just things that I think what people should realize too is how well coached I think they are. The fact that Gavin Whimsett was able to get the snap off when Temple had 12 guys on the field right? Like that's something that doesn't really, we're not used to seeing happen. We're not used to seeing Rutgers take advantage of mistakes and weaknesses from its opponent on the offensive end. We're just not. And that happened against Temple. And that's just like a nuanced thing that just shows that this team is well coached. I mean, between Dave Brock at receivers, Flats, Pat Flaherty at offensive line, and then Shiraka as offensive coordinator. I mean, there's a ton of age and years and experience there between the three of them, and it's rubbing off on this team. And I think that's part of why Wimsatt's so comfortable and poised out there is they've really gotten into a better comfort level and a confidence level, and it shows. It just shows in terms of how he's performing out there, but also interacting and just he looks like a different quarterback in that regard. He's 54% completion percentage so far, not good enough. Running, I don't get him running up the middle, but overall, there's a lot of things to like about him and about this team. And again, going back to expectations versus hope, I did a podcast before the season. Hope me to October. Can they win enough games in September to get into October and have a legitimate chance at a bowl game? You got to get by Virginia Tech. That's your swing game. You get by Virginia Tech, you're 3-0. Doesn't matter what happens to the big house. Just get out healthy, beat Wagner. You go into October and you have Michigan State in turmoil. Mel Tucker's not going to be the coach. Not going to get into that, but you have plenty to read about. And then you go to Indiana. Rutgers could be 6-2. I know people get mad at them, jumping the gun here. I'm talking about possibility. They could be 6-2 the third week of October. That would be unbelievable. And then you're talking about going into November with the potential for pretty much a special season at Rutgers where you could win feasibly 8 games. Do you go to Iowa? Do you beat Maryland? You're not going to beat Ohio State and Penn State, but at Iowa is, not crazy. And then Maryland, so not trying to get ahead of myself, just talking the outlook, right? But it's possible. So everything that's still on the table that we wanted to be on the table is there. So just remember, if your expectations, if you're watching, you're getting frustrated, it's so much harder to be positive and to not get lost in expectations when you're watching them versus the off season, right? It's easy to say, if they went 5-7, to be okay with that. But when you actually have to watch a 5-7 team, fans get upset because a lot of things go wrong. So I get that that's where some people already are at after 2 games. I'm just worried for you because it's only 2 games and they're 2-0. So bear that in mind. But you got to beat Virginia Tech. Beat Virginia Tech, and everything is still on the table. They're going to start to get some national buzz. You go to the big house 3-0. It'd be a great thing to have and give the program some life, some juice. And credit to Schiano. I thought another thing I forgot to mention in my rapid reaction was that he let Wimsatt throw 2. He let him throw in that last drive of the first half. He let him throw. He threw deep into the end zone. In years past, he would have just taken a knee and run into the locker room. So I love that Schiano did that. He's making decisions. I think there's a trust level with him, Shiraka, and also Brock and Flats that Schiano hasn't had in a while. And you're seeing positive results in terms of how he's coaching. Yes, they got too conservative in both games with a big lead, a multi-score lead. I agree with that 100%. But otherwise, and they did snap out of it in both games a little bit. I just think that this team has a good balance right now, and I think they have good mojo. I think they do. And I talked about before the season, things going, Northwestern, that was a little bit of a break. Michigan State could be in complete chaos a month from now when Rutgers plays them. Who knows where this season could go, but right now they're in position and you have a very winnable home game against Virginia Tech. And the expectation should be that they can win it. Doesn't matter, what they don't do well, they have to do enough well to win the game, of course. And that's what we have to focus on. I think getting nitpicky right now, it's a little too early to get nitpicky. If something's going to cost them a game of Big Ten play, then we can gripe about it. But, if Wimsatt is throwing a little off a few times, but he's throwing down the field the way he's been throwing down the field and picking up big yardage in certain situations. I think we got to live with that. And I think there's belief that he can get better from that too. So I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you for watching and listening. It's late. This will be my Monday podcast, so I didn't miss it. Please check all my coverage at thescarletfaithful.com. I have like a dozen articles out since Saturday night and plenty more coverage coming this week. I'm going to have some guests and all that. So appreciate you listening and watching once again here at The Scarlet